Jumbo Espresso Talk Today community. It's Amma Robin here, host of this great and groundbreaking Espresso Talk Today podcast show. This is where we get curious and we get courageous about issues affecting Black people. Akwaba to today's show. Welcome to today's extra special show. This is going to be an interesting and extra special show, and I hope that we will experience something extra special too. Unity. Okay, you may be asking, what's she talking about? I'll get to it in a minute. If you're just joining the Espresso Talk Today show, then I wish you a happy and hearty Akwaba to the show and to the Espresso Talk Today community. Get ready to be challenged. Being part of the ETT community is an active state. Yes, you can come here and you can just chill. You can just be. And that's really great. Sometimes we all need just to chill out. But you'll find that you can also get involved, get going, and get challenged. The more you give here, the more you get here. As you may know, the Espresso Talk Today community podcast is a Black empowerment podcast show. We aim to empower ourselves and each other in every show. The team is and has been discussing lots of aspects of Black empowerment. Some of these issues are obvious, some less so, but they're all important to Black people and to the Black community. We've talked about so many different things. Let's review just a few. Racism, that's right. Systemic, structural, interpersonal, and internalized racism. White supremacy. The white Western world was built on it, and it's still active and influential. We gotta stop it. Black health, Black self-care, Black history, Black culture, literature, and art. Black philosophy, Black liberation, Black economic empowerment, Black-centered psychology. We talk about all things Black empowerment here. I needed a deep breath after thinking of all the things we talk about. We've gotten very specific about some topics, like the 8 steps to optimum health, managing racial encounters, how our quest for success in white society is damaging our health, and racial battle fatigue or the effects of microaggressions on our mental and physical health. We've even discussed the do's and don'ts of applying for financial aid for college study. Everything that can empower Black folks is discussed here, or will be discussed right here on this show. Okay. So what are we going to discuss today? I gave you a little hint a few minutes ago when I said unity. I'm going to give you another hint now. I could have said, in fact I had planned to, then I changed it at the last minute. Hujambo Espresso Talk Today Awujo. Now I didn't say that. I didn't say Awujo. Awujo, but I meant to, and I'm going to explain it now. Awujo means community in the Yoruba language. And this is our topic today, community. So you see where unity fits in? Actually, unity is part of the word community when spelled in English. So we're talking community. And on that basis, unity fits right in. So, what is community? Why is community important? What are the benefits of community? These are all great questions, and we're going to answer them on this show. Let's start at the basics. What is a community? You probably think, of course I know what a community is, but let's make sure we're all on the same page here. Community is defined as a social unit with commonality, such as place, norms, religion, values, custom, or identity. Communities may share a sense of place situated in a particular geographical area, or even in a virtual space. through communication platforms. Okay, that's a definition. Very true definition. But I admit it really didn't speak to me. I don't know how you felt about it, but it didn't speak to me. It's accurate, but it feels like it's not true. It's not the whole story. And actually, I have a story for you a bit later that I think will be more revealing about community. But first, let's talk numbers. We'll start with that. In the United States, there are 47.22 million Black Americans. The number of Black people living in the United States reached 2021. That's very surprising after our experience with COVID, but okay, I can accept that. And this data is according to the Pew Research Center analysis of government data. Texas was the state with the largest number of African Americans. As for cities, New York City had the largest number of people reporting as Black, with about 2.3 million people, followed by Chicago at 1.1 million Black people, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Houston, which had between 500,000 and 1 million Black people in each place. These are interesting figures. Probably not totally surprising, but there's still more to the meaning of community. And before you start thinking, wow, I want to go to where all these Black people are living, I want to go find my community. I want to go to Chicago or Detroit or Philadelphia, Houston. Fine, those are great places. But let's look a little deeper first. Well, as a child, I remember my parents told me repeatedly that you are basically like the people that you hang out with. I think the saying is that, you're the average of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, or some derivative of it like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Well, all of those sound interesting, and probably they're not too inaccurate. But, for example, the data is showing that if you hang out with someone who is obese, then you are 10% more likely to become overweight. This applies to smoking as well. So, there is some commonality there. There is some influence. And this influence and connection and energy, to me, makes up community. There are more things about it too. This applies in other ways, like going to college. If you're hanging out with people who are going to college, guess what you're more likely to do? If you hang out with entrepreneurs or business owners, then owning a business or being an entrepreneur doesn't seem like something so strange. Getting involved in politics and, starting a business or lots of other things. You get involved with people who are involved with those things, then you're more likely to get involved with them too. Why? Because we all influence each other. Sometimes this is conscious, but often it's unconscious. Often this happens. And this influence and connection and energy help to make up a community. And awujo, remember that word? I'm going to use that sometimes. I like it though, because it says a lot to me. Well, is this Black empowerment? And what does this have to do with Black empowerment? I'm glad you asked, because I wanted to get to that. And I do often talk about the Black community. These 47.2 million people, Black people living in the United States. The Black community. Sometimes I really feel uncomfortable using this term. It could imply that we are monolith, that we're all the same, that we have the same desires and same needs and thoughts and interests and problems. And I know that this is not true. The Black community is so incredibly diverse in every way. Remember, I said 47 million people in America. No way that we're just one big identical lump or group of people, despite how certain groups may want to label us. Not true. So why do I use this term? Why have scholars and activists used this term for decades, if not centuries? Okay, well, I can't speak for them. But I use this term because it focuses on one issue that I think we do have in common, that I think we do share, one experience, and that's the problem of racism. Many of us experience anti-Black racism in different ways, and we have different thoughts and opinions about it, yet we all experience it on some level. And I don't want to say that, well, all of our experience of being Black is about racism, because it absolutely is not. But I think on some level, we all do experience it. Black conservatives, Black political conservatives will approach racism in different ways or experience it differently than Black political liberals. Black radicals will approach it differently from both groups. Yet we all do approach and examine racism in some way during our lifetime. And to me, this allows me to use the term Black community in this context of anti-Black racism. But there are lots of different intersectional, overlapping Black communities out there, and each serves a particular purpose and a particular interest and community and identity. I remember, and I hope you do too, I remember when Kim Bradley, the financial aid analyst, discussed different scholarships and grants and other kinds of aid that are available to Black students. And I remember asking her about that, and she said, oh, yeah, there are these different grants available and all that kind of stuff. But then she said that it was important to think about being a Black student, yes, but also ask yourself, who else are you? What else are you? What other interests and skills and goals and identities and feelings and special experiences do you have? If I think of myself, I would say, well, I'm a cisgender, Black woman, mother, a Gen Xer, lawyer, activist, nature lover, writer, traveler, and that's just off the top of my head. And by the way, that's a very Gen X term. Yeah, so that's just, what I think of right now. But there are so many others. Kim's questions can also be applied to different ideas of community. We are all multifaceted, multidimensional, identity people, and that makes up who we are. This can help us to be part of different communities and identify our specific communities, not just a community that we're born into, but an identity. A community that we're born into, but a community that we can actively choose too. Community doesn't always have a great reputation, though. Western society often has difficulty with the concept of community. White Western society tends to focus more on individualism, which it considers to be antithetical, almost a threat, to the concept of community. Americans define themselves in terms of individuality as a people who are breaking away from old limiting structures and dogmas and attitudes and pushing to new frontiers. That doesn't have a great optics right there. But Americans think of ourselves as being individuals, and our individuality is extremely important to us. And this is one reason why community has been so hard to achieve and maintain in Western cultures, even as people of color in Western cultures. Self-reliance and individuality are the mainstays of Western culture, and community is viewed as a threat to individuality. And some people think that individuality is a threat to community, but certainly community, the idea of the collective, is considered a threat to individuality. In his book, The Healing Wisdom of Africa, Malidoma Somé says, and this is a quote, "Many modern people believe that community absorbs the dignity and integrity of the individual and threatens to kill the much cherished sense of self." End quote. I find this quote to be very powerful and illuminating, and I can absolutely see that many people feel this way. In fact, I used to feel this way. I know that communities are made up of individuals, but I thought that the price of community was too high for me if I had to let go of my individuality. For me, that price would be to give up my goals and my dreams and my creativity, to give up my meanness for the collective, to give up my individuality. And I realize now that this was a misconception, or rather, and I'm going to say it, a white Western conception of community. What do you think? I'm going to stop here for just a second and ask, what do you think about this? I mean, I'd love to know your thoughts about these different conceptions of community. And do you feel that community, threatens you as an individual? Or does community feel very normal to you? Well, I hope you write in and tell me what you think, because I really want to know. And in the meantime, we're going to continue, because Malidoma Somé continues in his book. He says, and I quote, "The truth is that one doesn't lose oneself as a result of being part of a community. On the contrary, being in community leads to a healthy sense of belonging, greater generosity, better distribution of resources, and a greater awareness of the news of the self and others." Wow, wow, wow. That is powerful. And it really rings true to me. But somehow I feel like when I've been a part of a community, I've been more meanness, that my meanness comes through more than even when I'm going solo. Is it true for you? Let me know. Now, I don't think that one loses themselves in community. Individuality, or I'm defining that as one's unique qualities and goals. Individuality, not individualism, is the cornerstone of community. If everyone is bringing their unique qualities to the community, then that community can flourish and grow and support and encourage each member. Well, why is community important? Why am I spending so much time on this? Well, because community doesn't get discussed very often. But community, the Black community, is Black empowerment. And Black empowerment is community. Many of the experts that have appeared on the Espresso Talk Today show have discussed the importance of community and the power of community. I'm going to bring them back on the show, or excerpts from their shows, to discuss why community is so important and how it's so misunderstood, but yet it is also so necessary for our mental and physical and spiritual and cultural health. The collective has always been important to Black and brown people. Yes, we also do value ourselves as individuals, but living and thriving and surviving in America for Black people has required a collective effort. A collective effort. And that is what we've done. Well, this is why the experts on ETT agreed that Black empowerment requires community. Safety requires community. Progress requires community. We can't do this alone. And our ancestors understood the importance of community. Black Americans have a long tradition and history with developing strong and supportive communities. From slavery and Reconstruction periods to the civil rights and Black Power movements, Black communities have been working to develop economic and political power, educational institutions, and safety for families since we arrived in the United States. Black communities in the U.S. were started by free or previously enslaved Black people to establish safe and prosperous living spaces. Many were established in southern states by newly freed Black people. Others were established in the North by Black people who had always been freed. These were often very different types of communities in terms of location. Like in the North, the communities were in urban areas. in terms of wealth. Some communities were, frankly, just more prosperous than others. And political power. After Reconstruction, many Black communities had strong political influence, especially in the South. Very interesting thought, huh? And there were other factors too that distinguished these communities. But cooperation was the driving force behind community development. Working for the collective, with the collective, was a driving force. Rampant racism, poverty, lack of education caused Black people to struggle and many times fail in their attempts to establish themselves in the hostile environment of the American rural South, as well as the urban North, which was, racism was quite rampant there too. Cooperation and the understanding of interdependence, though, encouraged Black people to create communities and wanting to feel safe and, encourage us to create communities, and often sometimes even just laws that prevented us from living in certain areas, forced us into certain areas, into certain areas that were kind of undesirable, and from there we created the communities. But these communities were powerful resources for Black Americans. We advanced economically by starting businesses, and these businesses catered directly to the needs of Black people without the hostility and diminishment from white businesses and white society in general. And they allowed Black people to advance economically. So important. Now, this wasn't always supported by white society or the American government. In fact, they could be quite hostile to it. America has been very uncomfortable with the concentration of power and the collective efforts of Black communities. You might have heard about the massacre of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yes, and I'm not saying a race riot. This is a racial massacre. It was located in the Tulsa neighborhood of Greenwood, and this vibrant and prosperous community of educated and industrious Black people have built up a completely self-sustaining community. However, on May 31st and June 1st, 1921, white Tulsans, with the support of law enforcement and the local city council, attacked the community and burned it down, and they killed hundreds of Black people. But Tulsa was not the only Black Wall Street. The history of other such districts nationwide is still not widely known beyond their home cities, though there were a lot of them around. There were a lot of Black Wall Streets. Bronzeville in Chicago, Hayti in Durham, North Carolina. Hayti, that's spelled Hayti. I love that. In Durham, North Carolina. Sweet Auburn in Atlanta. West 9th Street in Little Rock, Arkansas. And Ferris Street in Jackson, Mississippi. And of course, there was Rosewood in Florida. That was legendary. Oh my goodness. Well, in other ways, other communities, other functions of communities were for education. Education was always a struggle and a goal for African Americans because we were systematically excluded from institutions of higher education, but actually from almost all education. But communities wouldn't be stopped from educating themselves or their children. And Black colleges are the outcome of this community desire, the community investment, and really hard work. Black colleges, as they were called at the time, were established with the purpose of providing higher education, job opportunities, and research opportunities to Black students and researchers and scholars. And as we know, the HBCUs, as they're called today, the historically Black colleges and universities, are still providing this to Black students. In fact, we had Leslie Jones from the 107.org on the Espresso Talk Today show, and she explained how today's HBCUs are excellent educational institutions, but they're also supportive and thriving communities for Black students. And actually, they support the whole town where they are. I mean, it's a whole economy. It's a whole community. It's really, really quite amazing. Founded in 1837, Cheney College in Pennsylvania was the very first Black college. 1837. That's before the Civil War. That's still during slavery, although Pennsylvania was separate from that. But that was the first Black college developed. Booker T. Washington also founded Tuskegee Institute a little bit later in 1881. And a little bit later still, the brilliant educator Mary McLeod Bethune founded Bethune-Cookman College in Florida in 1929. They are all still there too. I mean, imagine, they are all still thriving colleges and universities. And I know that y'all have heard of, Howard University and Morehouse too, Dr. King's alma mater, Fisk, and lots of others. And they are great, excellent educational institutions, but they're also great communities for Black students. There's just so much history. There's so much more I could talk about, but I won't go into a lot of detail. But I mean, there are Black communities some that are more broadly based, others that are more focused. Think of the Black Panther Party, an amazing community that did so much for the larger Black community. The Student Nonviolent Coordinating Commission, SNCC, that was a community. Black churches and the Nation of Islam, Black liberals and Black conservatives, Black professional groups like the National Medical Association, Black doctors, still around too, by the way. I don't know if you knew about this, but you're going to find a Black doctor through them. Black nurses, Black psychologists, Black scientists, the Black Greeks, AKAs and Alphas. I'm from an AKA family myself, actually AKA and Alpha family. So, and the Black queer community. The Black queer community finally getting recognized, though they've been around for a long time. But they've been so much supported to each other, supportive to each other. We're going to talk more about them in a minute, because I think the larger Black community isn't showing the support for the Black queer community as we should. There are lots of communities. And why is this concept of community important? I keep coming back to that. Because being part of the Black community, or a Black community, like I said, there are a lot of communities around, can be empowering and uplifting and supporting and protective. Black Wall Street communities that I mentioned earlier helped Black people to start businesses and thrive in a racist country, a very hostile country. It connected people and made them stronger. 1 + 1 added up to more than 2. The sum is greater than the parts when we all worked together. But yet, as I said, community can also be dangerous and isolating. We saw what ultimately happened to the Black communities, the Black Wall Street communities that worked so hard to exist and grow and live the American dream. America didn't like that, not for Black people. They were targeted and destroyed. And this happened to other Black communities, like the Black Panther Party, which was considered to be a great threat, one of the greatest threats to American peace and security. We know what happened to Fred Hampton. We know what happened to SNCC and other civil rights community organizations as they were working for equality and voting rights and ending segregation. We know how the Black queer community has been targeted and terrorized by law enforcement and denied rights and protections by politicians. So, is community important? Absolutely yes. Many of the guests on the Espresso Talk Today show have noted that community has so many benefits and advantages. We're going to hear from those guests next week on our Excerpts by Experts show. But what are some of the benefits? I've mentioned some already, just in the context of talking about the communities. But let me just mention a few here. Number 1, community helps to solidify one's identity. Many Black people feel confused about their Blackness or about their Black queerness. We're told that black is this, but not that. We're told that black is bad, or that black is ugly. And this happens in many different ways. One's cultural identity can be supported and uplifted in communities of the same culture. And one's intersectional identity can be supported in communities, in these intersectional communities too. People often get confused about their identity or their intersection with others. So being in a strong community can help to clarify and strengthen those identities. Another is that communities can support good mental health practices. Belonging, support, and purpose are important to good mental health. They're critical to that. And community can provide these in ways that the Western concept of individuality absolutely cannot. And it does not. 3, strong communities encourage good mental health good mental health and good physical health behaviors. We have spoken many times on this podcast show about the importance of helping each other to achieve and maintain good mental and physical health. We should ask questions about each other's cholesterol or their blood pressure, or mention when someone's ankles look swollen, or encourage others to get good sleep habits or eating habits or cutting out alcohol, or ask questions if someone looks like they're struggling mentally or feeling depressed or experiencing anxiety. Good communities can support these habits, and they can help make implementing healthy habits easier and help people to live longer and healthier and happier lives. Communities can also support each other financially. Like the Black Wall Street businesses of the past, communities can support local businesses, they can support banks, and they can support other financial institutions in the community. This is particularly important for Black communities that struggle with keeping money in the community rather than going out quickly to larger or more other developed communities too. And finally, I'm going to end it with this one. Communities can be politically powerful and support social justice causes. We've seen how Black communities are working to stop police violence, to fix and demand change for environmental problems, and other racially charged problems. Communities can make the difference. There are lots of other benefits that we'll discuss next week, but these will get us started. They can help us to see that communities are powerful and important, and Black communities provide great examples of how people can cooperate and support each other. Well, I'm going to conclude by telling you a short story about how I learned what community means. Last year, I visited Ghana for the first time. I've traveled certain parts of Africa in the past, but this time I landed in Accra. I loved the history and the pulse and vibrancy of the city. Then we drove to Kumasi, a few hours away. We wanted to attend cultural events and museums and learn how to make kente cloth, and I took a cooking class too and watched cocoa being harvested. It was an incredible experience. Kumasi is a smaller city than Accra. During the cooking class, there was a blackout. Naturally, I began to panic a little bit, because it was very dark and I was in a different area and it was a blackout. In the US, when there's a blackout, watch out. It was so dark and so quiet, and yet people were continuing to go about their business. People came over to meet us and to talk about cooking and about kids and lots of other topics. I could only see by candlelight, and I was actually cooking over coals. First time I ever made plantains cooking over coals. It was great. Yet people continued on. No one was afraid. People were helping each other to cook. They were watching each other's kids, and they were helping others to walk carefully, particularly the elders. Someone started playing the guitar, and people started to dance or just get into the rhythm. Then I realized that I was moving to the rhythm and watching the kids and cooking and talking to the women who were coming to visit. we just didn't miss a beat. I was suddenly overcome with this feeling to exhale. I felt such safety and peace and belonging. In the darkness of this new place, I felt such peace, and I felt that I was with kinfolk, not strangers. I felt supported and encouraged and powerful. And I felt in the rhythm and in the pulse of this environment. This was something bigger than me. It was us. This is a community. This was an awujo. A community is an experience, I realized. That's what I learned. A community is an experience, and it's an energy, and it connects and supports and uplifts. It was hard for me to define community before, but I knew it when I finally experienced it. I think this is a good place to stop for today. I hope that you have enjoyed this talk about the importance of community, especially Black communities. Yes, I know. There is so much more we can say about this topic. Don't worry, we're going to say more next week. And as I said, we'll bring in some of the experts who have appeared on the ETT show, and we'll discuss ways to bring people together in the community. We have some simple but effective steps that we all can take that can make a huge difference. I also found an amazing poem by Muhammad Ali. Yes, Muhammad Ali, that sums up this concept and reality of community. I think you're going to love it. Well, I am a Gen Xer, but I look back and think my parents were right. The people around me and the energy that we all bring to the table make us who we are and empower us to greater heights. So what are your thoughts about Black communities? Do you think that Black communities have shown strength and power? Or do you feel that they've been less successful than they should be? Or maybe both? I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions, because Espresso Talk Today is a community of amiable intellectuals, and we can talk about anything and everything. Nothing is ever off the table here. So hit me with your direct messages or email and just share your thoughts. Well, asante sana for joining me in the Espresso Talk Today team today. We look forward to continuing to build strong communities that support Black people everywhere. We know this is not an easy task, but it's an important and powerful one, and it will make our lives better. We also want to grow the community, this community. So we would appreciate it if you would share this podcast show with your family and friends, or just anybody you think would enjoy it. You can find us on Facebook at our group called Espresso Talk Today Forum. We are also on Instagram at Ama Robin L. That is Ama _Robin the letter L. And of course, you can always contact me directly at team@espressotalktoday.com. And you can we're always here for you actually, at espressotalktoday.com on our website. I'm Ama Robin. And remember, strength, soul, and reparations. Lots of love, my community. Lots of love, my awujo. See you next time. Ashe.